Giuseppe Mattozzi. I'm a member of Theseus, a researcher, assistant professor here at the Politecnico, and I'm very happy to introduce Kobe de Keere for this talk that, as you know, is called Cryptocurrency, Technology and Values. Kobe de Keere is assistant professor in sociology at the University of Amsterdam. He has been fellow of the Netherlands Institute of Advanced Studies and is affiliated scholar of the Weathered Research Cluster on Comparative Inequalities and Inclusion at Harvard University. And now he is visiting here in Theseus. It's the first actual visiting scholar in Theseus. He arrived almost 1 month ago. He will go away in a few next week. And so we have enjoyed his presence and tried to understand how to dialogue about his research. And what is his research about? Kobe is specialized in economic cultural sociology, which means that he's interested in understanding how cultural factors and values influence economic practices and values. So somehow the short circuit between two of the definition of values. For instance, he has written a very fascinating article about middle-class women working in luxury retail stores in order to understand how they acquire the taste for selling luxury products addressed to people of a different social class, of a different economic standing. Or, for instance, he has studied how recruiters and human resource managers, what are the criteria, what are the values that they use in order to evaluate new recruits in job interviews, but focusing on how they evaluate leisure activities of the people who are undergoing a job interview. So, as you can understand, these researches are very interesting, but they do not concern so much technology. And technology is the focus of the Politecnico, of course, and the focus of Theseus, the relation between technology and society. But recently, he has moved his research, research about, let's say, the short circuit between values and values on cryptocurrency. And so he has started to wonder what is the relevance of technology in order to create both values, but also how technology is shaped by both definition of values. But this is what we will talk about, so I'm not going to anticipate anything besides that. And this, again, differently from our other Theseus colloquia, I mean, in the other Theseus colloquia, people came and often they just finished the book. So, I mean, their research was done, basically. In his case, as I said, he's a visiting scholar, he's really in the middle of the field, so it will be a bit different. What he'll present us will be more, I mean, what is finding, what are the first hypotheses. So the idea is really to discuss, I mean, he's here to learn from us and we from him. So please take it as a sort of a different, little different format from the others, and we hope that we will have a nice, engaging debate. So thank you very much, Kobe. Welcome.
So yeah, thank you. Yeah, first of all, please let me know in the back if it maybe gets more quiet, then I'll definitely switch to the microphone. But I guess my voice, it's not a nice baritone, but it carries quite far. So first of all, I would like to thank the Polytechnic and especially the people of Theseus for allowing me to be here. And as Alvise explained, it's really this period that I try to think through, that I try to think through some new ideas. So indeed, I'm working on this, and I like the expression of a short circuit. I'm really thinking about how value in terms of norms and beliefs people have, how they can actually turn into economic value. And I did this on the labor market, and for a year or so, I'm now focusing on the crypto market, which is a still very, very young and new market, and in that sense, it's kind of a pressure cooker because things happen so fast. Many of the people I talk to say 1 month in crypto is comparable with 1 year in another market because things move so fast, which also allows me to study things at a quite rapid pace. So I don't know what the background is of people. I guess some people are very familiar with cryptocurrency. For others, this is a new topic. I hope I'll be able to take everybody along. First of all, a disclaimer, I don't know everything about cryptocurrency because there's just so much to know. I don't know all the angles. I approach this as an economic, cultural sociologist. One thing important to know is that it is not a marginal phenomenon, although some people would qualify it as that. It has by now about 400 million people are engaged in cryptocurrency in one way or another. And with that, it actually has an adoption rate which is comparable to that of the internet in the 90s. You will see many media continuously saying that the crypto market is at an end. Each time the value goes down a bit, you see a lot of news reports on this. This one is from January, but actually there was some issues with the SEC, which is a regulator, which I'll talk about later, which again, the whole media said, well, now finally the crypto market is dead. The crypto market is super volatile. That's definitely true, but you can hardly call it that. It's actually quite a vibrant market. At one point 2 years ago, it had a ridiculously high market capitalization, so that's in terms of dollars. The worth of that market was about 3 trillion. That has many factors, and one of the important factors was that we should not forget that during the pandemic, also a lot of money was printed to cope with the pandemic, and the money had to go somewhere, and it went to a lot of places, and one of the places it went was in the crypto market. So in a sense, this was more an external factor. But in any case, it is still now a market of 1 trillion, at least $1 trillion US dollars, which is comparable to the value of the subprime mortgage market in 2008 when it caused a global financial crisis. So it is not a market we should ignore in any case. Very important now, and I also always have to do this, is explain what I'm not going to talk about, because it is such an immense topic, and I have a very specific interest in this. And first of all, obviously not going to talk about how you can get rich with crypto. If I would know that, I would probably not be here, or maybe in a different capacity. So I'm not going to talk about, in that sense, like where is this going? Will it be worth more money or less money? Honestly, I have no idea. What I'm also not going to talk about, and that's primarily that I don't want to embarrass myself, is about the technical back end. The mic?
Yeah, because there are noises in the background.
Yeah. Is the technical back end of the story. So I'm not a computer scientist, I'm not a mathematician. I'm sure many people here actually know these things way better than me. So is this better? Yeah. So if I would get into that, I'd probably make a fool out of myself. I might still make a fool out of myself, but then at least now it's not conscious. A third thing, and this is what I'm very often addressed about, I'm not going to talk about the crypto market and its scams. Scams are part of the market. Scams are part of many markets, but they are especially prevalent within the crypto market. That's definitely sure. You have many different types of scams. One common scam has to do with the hacking. People get their crypto stolen. Another type of scam has to do with people selling crypto that are actually not even crypto, just you being addressed by some weird email address that asks you to send money. And then you have your classical Ponzi scheme scams, which is here the picture of the FTX, which some of you might know. FTX was a big broker platform who said that they were buying crypto for people, but in the end it seems that they weren't actually buying that much. How I see it in many ways is that this is relevant to the market, but I don't see it as the core of the market. It is an aspect to it, but I don't really see that people who are actually involved in developing crypto in this field are necessarily involved in scams. One other thing, and this might be even a bit more surprising, I'm not going to talk about now, this says still 300 million, but about actually the vast majority of the crypto owners. 90% of the people who own crypto, in that sense, are not a part of this story. And I will often make comparison with the art market. You know, if you study the art market, studying museum visitors or studying people who maybe bought a book or a record is not necessarily the thing that's going to explain a lot how the market functions. So that's kind of, they are definitely a force. You know, the customers, the retail is a force within a market, but it's not my main focus. Okay, so I'm now going to not give a definition of cryptocurrency because I think it's very hard to give a definition which captures everything, and for some people it might even be completely irrelevant to hear that. But I want to point out some important aspects of how I understand what cryptocurrency is about. So first thing is it is a virtual means of exchange. In that sense, it's nothing new. Emails is a virtual means of exchange. We already exchange money virtually. In that sense, it's not new. But it's a virtual means of exchange based on a public distributed ledger, which we often call the blockchain. And that sounds very complicated, but it's basically an Excel file that you share within a network and that you validate by the network. So it's an open ledger. It's an open accountancy system that is validated by a network. Very interesting, what this actually solves is the problem of digital duplication. So before, when I send money from my bank account, I actually have a bank, a central authority, who can see that I didn't spend that money twice. That's the double spending problem. This kind of solves this without a central authority. It is, as I said, a peer-to-peer network system. So it is based not on one server or one location, but it's peer-to-peer and it's shared over many computers. And it has a system of verification and validation. And there's many different systems out there, but there's a system that is based on incentives and cryptography, that people are actually incentivized to validate the public ledger, that they somehow get something out of it by doing it. And it is a pseudonymous transaction mechanism. It's not completely anonymous because you have what they call a wallet. You have your personal tied to one individual, but there's no name. Well, I'm going to talk about regulations later. So far, in the logic of it, it has no name, but it is transparent. Very important to know is that there's many cryptocurrencies. There's many projects, there's many coins, there are many tokens. Very often, Bitcoin is being synonymized with cryptocurrencies, but that's only one of the many projects, and I will get into the difference of the projects later. There's about, right now on coin market websites, there's about 10,000 different coins. There are probably even more. The last one that actually was issued was called Berlusconi. I have no idea what the project behind it is, but it kind of demonstrates that a lot of people also do it as a joke or as something to express some kind of a hobby or whatever. The implications of, at least the way I see cryptocurrency, are, as an economic sociologist, as a sociologist in general, very fascinating. First of all, you have digital uniqueness, something which we didn't have before. You have digital uniqueness, which leads to virtual scarcity. You can make something digitally, which everybody has used copy-paste, but now there's this notion of scarcity in there. The second important thing is that you can protocolize how you distribute that scarcity. You can make a protocol that decides how it's being created, who has it, how it's distributed, and how it's being transacted. A third very important aspect for me is that, and I already said this, a lot of this is possible without central authorities. And this is kind of new in our, at least say, modern society, to be able to transact, to be able to distribute value without any central authorities checking it. And this is the consequence of all it, you can basically reinvent economic logics through a protocol, through coding the way you want things to be. So you might have a certain idea of how you think transactions should be done, how value should be distributed, and you can actually code it that way. So a very simple example of this, and I'm going to start with the most famous example, is the Bitcoin case. Right? So Bitcoin is also the original, is the first coin within the field. They call it the Bitcoin is king, or the mother coin, or whatever. So Bitcoin uses the system of blockchain-based transactions, but there's actually more in it. So one of the reasons why the person we don't know who started Bitcoin, one of the things it came out was out of this post-2008 crisis, and one of the things that they were very worried about was the problem of inflation. So what is already coded into Bitcoin is to have a system that cannot, as they would argue, inflate. So how do you do that? First of all, you make a cap on the amount of coins that can be issued. They're issued here through a mining system, and I'll explain a bit about that later. But there's a cap on it, which means that there will always be less and less Bitcoins. And another thing that was protocolized, there's an economic logic that's being protocolized, is that it will become increasingly more difficult to mine it. And in that sense, you create a system. So it's not just about, well, I can transact it and I don't need central authority. You also, in the code, you build something to see a certain economic system emerging. So what has social science so far said about cryptocurrency? One thing, of course, is the classical question, is a very classical social science question: what is money? From Weber, Marx, Simmel, many people have asked this question, and this question came back to the forefront with the rise, especially of Bitcoin. That people were asking, is it money? Can it function as money? How can you have money without trust? These kind of questions. The kind of conclusion out of this was, is first of all, people use gold very often as the point of reference, as like the cultural construct of which they compare good money with. Second thing is, there seems to be what many of the scholars thought, some kind of promise gap, that they promise to have a trust-free system, but yet at the same time, the whole system is based on a network of people collaborating, so it's based actually on a lot of social relations and a lot of trust between factors, between developers, between a lot of people actually engaging it. So instead of saying, we want to have a system, and this is what Nigel Dodd, who sadly passed away recently, he said, well, Bitcoin will succeed as money to the extent that it will fail as an ideology. So the ideology is we can have a system that's free of public for people interfering, yet it is completely based on social relations. So that was one of the first things that came out of it. A second thing is Bitcoin, or still the focus was primarily on Bitcoin because it also was so early in the game. It's a political project. And there's a lot to say for the fact that it is a political project. So this unknown mythical figure who wrote the first Bitcoin code, which is Satoshi Nakamoto, nobody knows who he is. There's some hypothesis. But he or she or they come out of the cypherpunk movement. So there was immediately this connection with anarchist roots and libertarian ideas tied to it. So that was what drew a lot of attention immediately. Is this a technological social movement, right? Are we getting into a new phase where social movement is technologically achieved? And as scholars were arguing, it's mainly being picked up by anti-establishment, anti-state people. So one famous book that came out of this was David Colombia's book. He said, well, he said it's basically some extreme right technological coup that they're trying to. And he said Bitcoin's social and political functions far outstrip its technical ones. In this sense, Bitcoin can only be seen as just a tool for political idea. Personally, I find it not a very convincing analysis. Also, once you start into the field, you see that it's much more diverse. Of course, there are right-wing people who are interested in, but there are also left-wing people. So, and also the way that technology is just seen as a tool is a bit problematic. Finally, it's been also picked up by science and technology studies. And what is interesting here is that they kind of jumped over the Bitcoin story and immediately went into this other coin, which is the Ethereum and other coins, which is a much more Ethereum is a project much more led by developers. Much more things are happening, much more things are being created. And that is also what draw, I think, the attention of science and technology studies. So one thing they were interested in is in the fact how layered it can be. So you have the blockchain, and the first blockchain is like the first layer, but on top of that, you can build and create a lot of things. So as some of them said, like Koray Saliskan is one of those people who just brought out this quite interesting book, Data Money. He says, well, we actually need to understand it as an actor network platform on which things can economically build, and he calls this stack economization. He actually uses the metaphor of stacks like in kitchen, how in the kitchen you can stack plates on top of each other. And he says actually that allows for this new type of economization, so economy as a process. So I draw on all these things in one way or another, but I, of course, try to add something. Oh, and my position is I'm interested in the field in its complete. I'm interested in the architecture of this market and understanding how value actually emerges out of that. First of all, I'm inspired by people like Calon, who would say, well, a market is never just there. It's not just rational actors who do cost-benefit. A market always needs to be performed. It needs to be performed through certain economic ideas. There's a famous example of Calon and collaborators about economic formulas, how they actually infused the market and created economic thinking. But also technology is a way that a market can be enacted, a market can be performed. Adding to that, I'm interested in the relational aspect. And this is where the field theory comes in. How do different actors within that market relate to each other, assess what the other is doing, and how is value emerging out of that dynamic, right? And a classical example is of Pierre Bourdieu, a French sociologist. Some of you might be familiar with him. He made this famous study of the art market. And I'm not going to spend too much time of it because it's about the crypto market, but it might help you to understand in which direction I'm looking. So the classical study of the art markets, he found that there's a specific structure to it. And one point he says, in the art market, on the one hand, you have what he calls the autonomous part of the art market. And those are people who do art for art's sake, l'art pour l'art. You do art because it is a form of authenticity, it's self-expression, it's pure art. On the other hand, you have what he calls the opposite, the heteronomy pole. And this is art for basically money's sake. You sell art in galleries, you sell art to the public. It's not about self-expression, but it's about the economic aspect of art. So art for art's sake, art for money's sake. To that, he added actually another interesting dynamic, and he says, well, one, you have art, whether it's for art's sake or for money, but it's very established. Very expensive art in art galleries. It's very established art, very renowned art. Or art that might sell a lot, but is not renowned, and that is what he calls the low degree of concentration. The low, something, there's a bit of a delay with the low degree of consecration. The point that I'm trying to make is the value of art didn't emerge from one actor, didn't emerge from an artist expressing itself. The value of art emerges from all these players interacting with each other and having a certain relationship towards each other. And that's what I'm trying to do with the crypto market, trying to understand what are the different players, what are the structural dynamics in it, and how is value through protocolizing values, right, emerging. So my research is, on the one hand, ethnographic research, and it's mainly both focused on the Netherlands. So it is based on online, social media, etc. Offline, I go to a lot of meetup, conferences, hackathons, spend a lot of time with people from within the crypto market, and I interview them informally. Next to that, I have formal interviews with people from active in the market. So it's not somebody who bought a Bitcoin once, but it's people who are actively engaged. It can be people who are devotees, people who are running a node on their computer, testing software, people who are organizing events, developers, platform workers, market entrepreneurs, traders, people who are really active in the market. So I've so far interviewed 40 of them. And then, and I'm not going to talk about this, I'm also doing analysis of YouTube data of 2,000 transcripts of YouTube clips. So the two dimensions, and let me check the time to see if I'm on schedule. So I still have about 20 minutes. Okay, so two dimensions that I've found through all of this, talking a lot with people, spending, like immersing myself, and they often use the word rabbit hole when it's crypto market, and it's really, you really feel like Alice, twisting around. And there's two dimensions. The first dimension I want to talk about is the rules of the crypto game. And I put this Satoshi Nakamoto there because very often when they refer to that, they say we need to stay loyal to the cypherpunk values. And it's a bit crypto for crypto's sake. It's like, what are the values? Why are we doing that? What drives us engaging in this crypto market? What drove this unknown person to make this? And there are 4 important values that the crypto for crypto's sake values, as I would argue. And the first one is obviously, and I would say the most important one, is this notion of decentralization. That we're living in modern societies, or even postmodern society, depending on how you look at it, that is organized in a centralized way, and we want to counter that. So it's whatever you do, whatever you develop, always try to make it decentralized. That it's spread over networks, not tied to one service, that it's open source, all these things. So here you see this move from centralized finance to DeFi, decentralized finance. It's a very important aspect to it, the network aspect, and as I said, the open source aspect. And this is really curious if you compare it with other economic markets. The sense of property is quite different. So nobody is worried about the patents of their developments. Almost everything is on GitHub, open source, available. So there's this idea of decentralized, even if you develop something new, which might make you very rich, you put it online to share. A second really important aspect is this notion of sovereignty. Like, you own it and nobody else, right? When I have money in my bank account, I don't really own that money. I park that money with a bank, and the bank basically has that money until I request to buy something with it, or until I request to take it out. This idea, the sovereignty idea, is the opposite. You should own, and this is about money, but it's also about your data, about your information, that you need to hold sovereignty over it. Any meeting you go, any conference you enter, at least once an hour, you hear somebody saying, not your keys, not your coins. So this is the idea that you have to hold on to your own coins, you have to keep your coins, and this is also what they call self-custody. So if you do it right, according to the crypto rules, you keep your coins with you. That can be digitally, but it can also be on a cold wallet, what they say, so which is not connected to a computer. Some people even have their passwords in metal rings, and they hide them throughout the neighborhood, all kinds of, but it's the idea that you hold it, you're responsible for it, and nobody else. A third one, and this is a complicated one, a third one is the privacy aspect, which has been a part of the cypherpunk movement since the 80s, at least. And with crypto, this is complicated because in a way, the blockchain is a very transparent system. You see everything because everything is a public, you can follow everything. Still, they will try to find solutions to at least make it pseudonymous, that it's not tied to your personal name, so you cannot be identified. Or there's things developed like, for example, Tornado Cash, that are, you can describe them as mixers. They mix transactions so that you don't know what went in and what went out. Tornado Cash is quite an interesting case because the one who wrote the code for Tornado Cash and then put it on GitHub is now arrested in the Netherlands and was being put into jail for quite a while because it has been used, apparently, and very likely, for money laundering. The question is, this is open source. I just wrote the code, I put it there. Am I personally responsible? Right? So for the crypto community, and a lot of people came to that trial, this is a proof, well, people are just trying to steal our privacy away. A last one is the game theory logic. And this one I was not expecting at all, but the game theory is used as the standard to compare whether your development or whether what's happening is actually happening in the right way. The idea is that you should always develop things in such a way that you get the incentive to do the most social thing. But you should do it out of this incentive, right? So it's not completely the same as the rational actor idea that you just do it out of cost benefit, but it's making it in such a way, you know, like the prison dilemma, it's best for both of us if we don't see anything, for example. So they would often assess whether a protocol is working well if it fits that game theory logic. Right? Is everybody incentivized to do the right thing? Is everybody incentivized to keep the public ledger secure and safe and validated? What is interesting is how do you become one of those crypto believers? And with the vast majority of people I spoke, there was a very similar process. Most people started out of curiosity, out of fun. Oh, I just bought it once. We're already tinkering with technology. Then realizing at one point, oh, it lost all its value. What did I actually buy? What is this about? And then they very often say, Oh, and now I started thinking. Now I started realizing what sovereignty actually means. That actually I don't have my money, but my money is in the bank. That I understand that transactions, why should anybody take a cut from my transaction? It's just me sharing something with you, for example. And this process is described by almost all the people I'll talk to. And they actually have a metaphors for this. So I was once at a Bitcoin maximalist meeting where Bitcoin only people come. You actually have to pay with Bitcoin to get in. Not a full Bitcoin, of course, but you have to pay with a fraction of it. And there was a discussion of somebody who was in first. And I joined the debate and asked what's going on. And they said, oh, we orange pilling her. So that means that they donated some crypto with the assumption then later that person would start thinking about what do I actually have. And this is like you swallow the orange pill, and then you will also start to realize, well, the way we organize our economy, the way we deal with privacy, the way we deal with these things, they don't make sense. We could do this better. They often also refers to the Trojan horse. This is actually an image from Cointelegraph. The Trojan horse being, you think you're first investing, or you think you're just gambling with some money, but then you start realizing that there's so much more behind, and you actually start to adopt the crypto for crypto's sake. So my point here is that these values, on the one hand, they can be enacted and protocolized because you code it in such a way that it fits these values, right? You code the blockchain in such a way that whatever is used is decentralized to some extent. But at the same time, these are also used as criteria of evaluation of which project you like or dislike, which project you want to engage in or not engage with. And a very common term within the field, and especially among the Bitcoin, is talking about other coins as being shit coins. They are not good coins. They are getting the story wrong. They're not following the traditional crypto values. So you should not engage with it. And you have websites who would, for example, list which one is the most decentralized. And there's huge debate, right? It can be decentralized, which has the most decentralized network, which has the most decentralized control, which decentralizes the way the coins are issued. I'm going to give an example about that later. How the governance structure is. Is there one person? Bitcoin, of course, is a great example because the person who ever invented it supposedly disappeared. So that person they know whose wallet it is, but the Bitcoins on that wallet have never moved. So it is this kind of godlike figure. In other cases, well, we know who they are. And they try to deal with this by, for example, not saying they're companies, but using the foundation structure. So they often issue coins from that foundation, but the foundation is not owned by anybody. It can be like a part of a smart contract, and the foundation gives gifts to developers, gives prizes, but it's not a for-profit kind of organization. And you see that with a lot of major coins that they have the foundation logic behind it. So one good example of understanding how these coins are being assessed is the case of proof of work versus proof of stake. For some of you, this probably already heard about this debate a zillion times. For others, it's new. It's a very important debate within the crypto field. So proof of work is what I basically described for the case of Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, it's in such a way that the coins are not issued in any central way. The coins are issued by those who do the work to validate the blockchain, to close the block each time, and they get a reward for that by doing calculations. And it's very demanding calculations. In a way, they're not super complicated, but they just ask a lot of computational power. And in that way, they put in the work to validate the block and get a reward for it. The good thing about this is completely decentralized because technically everybody can do it. Everybody can mine and everybody can get in that mining system. And notice the word mining, right? Proof of stake is very different. Proof of stake, you actually have some kind of vault or a basket where people put in money. It can be as some kind of investment. You can stake your money in there, and that money is used to give a fee to the people who validate the transactions. You can already hear what the discussion is, right? So the proof of work people say, well, this is just too centralized. You're basically reintroducing a bank. So they don't like this idea because it's centralized. Proof of stake, I have two important arguments. One is the energy argument. It takes an insane amount of energy to do the proof of work. It's comparable with all the energy production of the Republic of Czechia right now to just only maintain Bitcoin. So that's quite insane. Proof of stake doesn't take energy. The problem there, of course, it is some kind of centralization. And that's how these debates are fought out. And they say, well, I don't like you, you're a shitcoin, because you basically reintroduced centralization in a system that was so perfectly decentralized. So you have several coins which work with proof of stakes, and then others proof of work. So what you get is one dimension, right? One dimension is stay close to the crypto game or countering the crypto game. And then you have Bitcoin and Ethereum. There's a whole fight who is the most centralized. You have other coins like Ripple, which are, as I would assess, already much more decentralized. Like 60% of the coins are owned by Ripple Inc., which is an incorporation, which is a company. So this is already creates some kind of tension. A very interesting player in all this are the platforms. So platforms, I have two big ones here, Binance and Coinbase. Platforms are originally places where you trade coins. So it's a broker platform. You buy and sell coins. But interesting, these platforms almost take up the position as banks, because a lot of people don't do the self-custody thing. Of the 90%, most people buy and they leave it on the platform. So these platforms are holding an insane amount of assets. So they're functioning kind of as a bank, but also are huge facilitators in organizing conferences, in being the spokespersons with regulators and so on. So platforms are actually quite central in this. And even within these platforms, there's different positions. So you have the other extreme, FTX, which was completely custodial. So the people had all their coins there, or so-called coins. That's why when it collapsed, there were no coins. Everything was just gone. On the other side, you have Uniswap. Uniswap is also a platform, but it is a decentralized platform that is open, which is just a protocol on Ethereum, which is open code, and it's not owned by anybody. Right? So even here you see this dynamic between them, and then platforms will try to tap into the Uniswap system because it gets some validation from there, for example. But this same dimension of these different values express them again. 10 minutes. Okay. Another important aspect is, of course, the regulators. And the regulators, you should understand that all these debates are somehow, as their dialoguing partner are the regulators. Because for regulators, there's a lot of problems with the crypto market. First of all, when you're government, you want to know what happens economically within your nation. And there's problems of customer security, like the case of FTX. What about, if things got stolen? There's the problem of money laundering, of corruption, and so on. So in many ways, what these crypto is they try to deal with these regulations. So some of them, we should already protocolize things in such a way that we are always a step ahead of the regulators. So far, the regulators are mainly focused on the platforms. I think it is not necessarily low-hanging fruit, but it's also where a lot of money comes into the field. And even these regulators, so the Security and Exchange Commission, they're quite aggressive. Actually, and really interesting that the European Union, and it seems the same with AI, is actually quite on the forefront and has quite accommodating and facilitating regulations for the crypto market. And the Commodity Future Trading Commission, for example, is only focused on Bitcoin because it's seen as a commodity. So that dynamic. Why they find these regulators so annoying in the crypto field is because what regulators want is identification. Right? Regulators want to know who is involved, and this takes away all the privacy, and this is what they call know your customer. And this is a very common meme that they feel attacked by having to display who they are personally. Okay, last and second dimension I want to talk about brings us back to the original paper, and it's the difference between is crypto interesting as money or is crypto an investment? And originally, the first paper anonymously published says Bitcoin is a cash system. It's about money. But that's not necessarily for everybody the case. So crypto as money is the whole discussion about there's a problem with fiat money. Fiat money, they say, is being printed by a central authority whenever it suits them. And of course, things are not so simple, but that's the argument they are making. Whenever they need money, they just print it. Consequently, I lose the value of my money. That is their argument. It comes out of the post-2008, so don't trust banks. Crypto is much more safer store of value than money is, because we at least have control over it. It's not one central authority. And this is a very prevalent discussion about how can we actually bank the entire world. And this is an interesting argument because to make transactions, we basically only need a phone and an internet connection, and that's a true argument. So they say, well, actually, cryptocurrency allows us to reach people to get banked who would never be able to get banked. Another aspect is the aspect of remittance. A lot of money is sent over to other countries by people working, migrant people. Western Union takes about 7%. With this system, technically, you could do it almost transaction fee free, basically. So that is another very important, that sits in we need a new money system. The other side is basically crypto is only interesting for me because I get more dollars and euros out of it. I just gain more money, fiat money, and I'm fine with fiat money. It's a lucrative investment, it's a trading thing, and it's just an asset class like many other asset classes. And this is, for example, what the SEC is pointing at. It's just a kind of form of security, and that's how we should regulate it. But that's not the case for everybody. So let me try to illustrate this a bit, right, with the two dimensions. On the far end is definitely Bitcoin maximalist. They are not so much involved in developing a lot of things. They are not so much involved in building smart contracts and NFTs and all that kind of things. No, for Bitcoin people, it's making better and trustworthy money. And they get their inspiration from the Austrian School of Economics that has this, I would say, flawed story of money coming out of barter. We were trading, then we got gold, and then we made gold in coins, and then we put gold in the bank, and then we... A lot of research shows that the history of money is a bit more complicated than that, but their argument is, well, from the moment we stopped using gold, we got into problems. So basically, we want to get back to the gold standard with something that's even better than gold. Because they say we can make it deflationary. This is a common mean in the field that they would say, well, since 1913, actually, that's when the US let go of the gold standard, then it was reintroduced after the war for a couple of decades, but I'm not going to get into that. Actually, my money, my $20 kept losing value, while my Bitcoin is increasing value. So it's a deflationary system. One of the things that's actually been developed on cryptocurrency is the Lightning Network. And this is really what they're very proud of in the field, and it is basically a payment system. So if you go to Ethereum conferences, and I was one in May, almost nobody actually talks about transactions and actually using it to buy things, right? You buy maybe other coins or you support a project, but you don't go out and buy coffee with it. With the Lightning Network, you can actually easily go out, and I use it. It works actually pretty well. You can easily go out and buy things with Bitcoin. So it really becomes a currency in that sense. And what is very typical to those people is, and I talk to many of them, which are like maximalists, they say, I don't care about the value in euros or dollars. I buy Bitcoin to own them, and what they call hodling. Hold on for your dear life. You keep it because you believe some kind of post-apocalyptic world that this will be the new gold. So they actually, many of them actually like when the value in euros goes down because then they can buy more Bitcoin. So it's this idea that this will be new money. And there's Bitcoin credit cards. I interviewed one person who tries to live what they call fiat free, or what they call free from fiat slavery, by having a Bitcoin credit card that you basically buy everything with Bitcoin. And what is very important here, and I mentioned already so many times, is this notion of gold, right? That's how it's imagined. And just to show that it's not shared among all coins, so Ethereum works very different. Ethereum is very much a developer's field, based by creating things on top of this. It's very steered by IT. They don't really use the gold metaphor. For Ethereum, their coin is what they call gas. They use the metaphor for gas. They even use images of gas, gasoline, because it's productive money. It's money that needs to make that system work, that needs to make that ecology work, that people can build on it, but it's not to like hodl it, right? It's not to hoard it in the hope that after, when everything gets destroyed, that you have your Bitcoin. It's a very different understanding of what the role in relationship to money is. Of course, then you have even others, which are like meme coins. Meme coins hardly have a project. They can be very close to the original crypto values, that they're decentralized and whatnot. But it is there, basically meme coins is a bit like art. You hope that you jump in the right meme coin, that it gets its value because the field likes it. Can be partly a joke, that's why it's called the meme joke. But it's mainly an investment thing. And then on the other far left side for me, right side for you, is just as investment. And then you get into the world of the day traders, when you just do it to get money. So it's about buying and selling crypto as fast as you can by actually, at the end of the day, having more dollars or euros. And these are the world of the finfluencers, super popular world, the day traders. And I talked to several of them as well. And many of them say, I have no interest in crypto as a project. Some of them say, I think it's totally valuable. It doesn't mean anything for me. I'm not interested in it. The only reason why I'm interested in it is because it's a volatile market. And a volatile market that allows me to do technical analysis, and this is what we call the candlesticks, the green and the red candles, to understand how quick it goes up and down. And the only reason why you're interested in this market is because it's volatile, it's a roller coaster ride, it's extremely low threshold. For a long time, you didn't even have to identify yourself. You could just start trading. It's open 24/7, and it's completely unregulated. So you can imagine for many day traders, this was heaven. This was a perfect playground. And as many of them said, this is just for me monopoly money I play with until I win big, and then I pull out. Some of them that I interviewed were even part of scams, that they would launch a coin which has nothing behind, and then would pull out themselves. But they have no interest in the very little, what they do relate to is this idea of, well, we prefer that it's not regulated. We have some kind of libertarian idea, so we do not necessarily like the government interfering in the market. In that sense, they do tie into it, but they are really on the other extreme. So, and this is to wrap up. So you get this kind of structure of the market with two very important structuring dimensions. The question, of course, is like, are they perfectly perpendicular, right? Maybe in some cases, those two overlap, and in other cases, maybe all investors don't care about the rules of the game. That's really an empirical question. But this is, for me, with my hours and months of getting into the field, how things start to make sense to me. So, crypto for crypto's sake, the most maxi of all of them is Bitcoin people who are involved in the Bitcoin project, who organize events, who do social activism, who go to El Salvador for their holidays because they can live on Bitcoin money there. Those are the far end of the field. Ethereum, I would say, is quite in the middle of this, very close to the original values, but doesn't really have the intention to overthrow the economic system. They want to create a better internet. They want to create what they would call more sustainable, more collective system, but not necessarily, they want to create a different financial system, but not necessarily we want to get rid of all euros and fiat money. Dogecoin, as I said, you basically usually mainly do it for invention. Then platforms I would put pretty much in the middle. And they're in the middle because they're very important intermediary, but also they're in the middle in the sense how they position themselves. They are very aware of regulators, and they talk to regulators. And many people from platforms I talk actually want more regulation. And it makes sense for them because they want an equal playing field. They want things to be regulated. They want to bring in more customers. So they don't necessarily want everything to be private. But they also don't work without the people who are really building these things. So they are also dependent for this. So they are also aware that, oh, we need to think about self-custody, especially after the FTX drama. Self-custody became a thing with much more platforms. So they're really having this debate with both sides. Uniswap, as I said, is another example. Then you have your regulators within the field that kind of drive this dynamic of how far you want to protocolize your values. You have your day traders. Then you have your investment firms. On the one hand, you have investment firms that are crypto only, that actually are part of that crypto ecology. But then you also have investors, and this is the big news that happened yesterday. BlackRock, one of the biggest investment firms or funds, or however you want to call it, decided they want to start listing Bitcoin. So as you can imagine, the price of Bitcoin went up. A lot of day traders will be happy because there's a lot of volatility going on, but it's a huge push for the market again. Old banks still don't really know what they want to do. Initially, banks, JP Morgan, for example, was one of the first who said, Jamie Dimon, the owner, the CEO of JP Morgan, said, whoever's in my company and ever does anything with crypto gets fired. We've seen that narrative changing bit by bit, and they're getting closer to some kind of acceptance. And this, I think, this will be the future discussion. is the way authorities and nation states are moving towards creating CBDC, central banks digital currencies. CBDCs are some kind of digital asset, but they stand on completely the opposite side of crypto for crypto's sake, of the rules of the crypto game. It is centralized, you will be identified as controllable, but it is definitely a reaction to the rise of these crypto coins. And this is, I think, where we will, the debate will be heading more and more. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here. I'd love to hear some questions or ideas or insights from you.
Okay, thank you very much, Kobe. It was very interesting and insightful for people like me that don't know much about crypto. Maybe you want to go back to the net that somehow
summarizes
which of course can be part of our discussion, but not necessarily. There are many aspects also about your. Living with these people that maybe can be of interest.
Maybe some people here who are active in this sphere. I would love to see how they read this the way I try to structure it.
And so we have two microphones, so maybe we are going to use both. And so questions are open. And if you want, you can also ask them in Italian. Kobe understands Italian in case I will translate. He will talk in English, but in case you can also ask questions in Italian. Yes, one there.
Thank you. I just have two quick questions. First of all, the thing is about the discussion of decentralization. So yes, it is quite inspired from computer science, but in general, the upper layer, so the end goal is the design of the very system, even if the parts work in a decentralized manner, is somewhat centralized. So you determine, let's say in the Bitcoin, that the upper threshold for issuance is this. So it comes a bit contradictory with the all anarchist mentality, and it's interesting from a social science perspective, and I wonder what you found out about that. And the second one is you were laying it out as a set of actors by the rules of art theory, and I was wondering, to this particular moment in time, considering the axis, which one, how was it swaying? Because some actors may be more powerful at a particular moment in time, so they can determine that majority of the field. Thanks.
No, two very, very good questions. Which I actually, the first one, it's actually a question I keep on throwing back to them. Because indeed, so there's this one hand, it's like, oh, this is kind of like anarchist utopia because everything is decentralized. But when you look at it, first of all, you look who have the Bitcoins. There's a Bitcoin elite. There are a couple of whales who have an insane amount of money. So there's that aspect. There's the aspect of mining. They say, well, everybody can mine. There's only 5 mining locations in the world because you need to have all the equipment, all the money, and cheap energy. So when I say them, like, but isn't this like centralizing? Then there's two things. First of all, they say, well, we still have the node. So if we don't agree with a miner, or we don't, then I could not accept their transactions. And if we do that collectively, then, and that's where the belief in this game theory logic is so strong. They say it will never get, we still have the power because it's set up this way. I doubt whether that's true, because you see so many centralizing forces in there. And this is kind of what Nigel Dodd was also pointing at with this promissory gap. Like on the one hand, you say there's a system that's completely trust-free, but when you actually look at it, also the developers, in total, there were about 15 people developing what you call the Bitcoin core. Now there's only like 3 people who are actually still tinkering with it. So that doesn't sound super, but it's right. It's this is the norms, what they try to achieve, and this is also kind of how they police themselves by having discussions, oh, aren't we getting too centralized or not? And this was one of the moves also why Ethereum claims that their staking process is actually more decentralized, because they say, well, at least everybody can stake somehow. Your second question, is it going to sway one direction? I think things like BlackRock and stuff will possibly make it sway in one direction. And then I see something like Ethereum could come out of this pretty well, because Ethereum is not necessarily wants to be an alternative money system, but an alternative new internet, Web 1.3 thing. Yet, I do think that the whole Bitcoin story has a very powerful argument when it's about international money, when it's about being able to unbank places and other places in the world where people don't have access. So I don't know. If I knew, I would probably be investing and I would sit on an island somewhere, but I don't know. But I think those are two very powerful movements that will happen in the future.
Yes.
Hi, thank you so much for your speech. So I had more of a curiosity. So with regards to the devotees, you both highlighted, let's say, people who would like to use Bitcoins in a day-by-day basis with the Lightning system. While on the other hand, you also have people who are more interested in, let's say, hoarding Bitcoin and waiting for the apocalypse.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to understand, in your opinion, which of these two opposite points of view is more prevalent, let's say, within the devotees?
Definitely the hodler. Okay. Definitely, by far. So, well, there's three aspects. One, of course, it's like the hodler story is the most powerful. I have also people told me I don't like to spend my Bitcoin because then I have to buy new ones, and now I have them, and I'd like to keep them as they are and keep them cold storage. Then there's the aspect that also this Lightning system is used to do orange pilling, right? By paying somebody once, you might get more people in, and the more people hold. So it is also used as this way of hodler. However, the two people I talked that try to live by paying through Bitcoin, they are the ones who really sit into this international story. They see themselves also as digital nomads. They live around the world. They see it as some kind of global humanistic story. So, but vast majority is the hodler story for sure. Yeah.
If there are no other questions,
I didn't see any.
Okay. So thank you so much for this fascinating talk. Actually, I mean, you were. Let's put it this way: regulation is different from centralization, right?
Yeah.
And it seems to me that sometimes, I mean, we are conflating the two.
Yes,
so my question would revolve around regulation per se, rather than centralization. I'll get back to that a bit later. So where are the incentives? I mean, you were just mentioning, I mean, there are those who tend to, so the true believers are individualists and they want to hoard, so there's no incentive to regulation. Investment-oriented may like some regulation, but actually they also like it non-regulated because then they have, arbitrage opportunities, let's put it this way. So where's the demand? So possibly, or some, catastrophic events may set in train, demand for regulation, and then what is the source of regulation that links regulation to centralization? It seems to me that I might be totally wrong. I mean, before coming to this talk, I thought that there is little Olsonian stratification of interest. So. You might have powerful actors, but actually the most powerful actors, those that actually have authority, are all banks, regulators, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the platforms want regulation, banks want regulation. So how do you see And then I have a second question.
Maybe first answer this one. Well, first of all, it's indeed, I agree. Regulation does not necessarily mean centralization, but they see it that way, right? That they react to regulation because they would see it as
But if I may just follow up on this, you're a sociologist. I mean, Streeck on this, and also Scharf, self-regulation on the part of, let's say, business association. No state involved. No state involved. We don't want the state in, but we self-regulate because it's a market construction exercise. We need it.
Yeah, indeed. So no, I was just trying to clarify this point between that you say that regulation is not necessarily centralization, which I agree with, but the top sees it that way. So that's the first thing. But the second point, indeed, there is actually a lot of self-regulation going on, and I see this primarily in the Ethereum realm, that they are so fully aware of that. Well, also they feel the market cannot really grow if we stay in this Wild West. And definitely the platforms 100% agree with this, so they actually are very open to regulation. But what we see is that these, in Ethereum, that was I tried to say, they want to actually be ahead of regulations, so they want to have ways of self-regulating already within the protocol, that at least they feel it's not enforced on us from the outside, and when regulators come to us, and so I gave this example of Tornado Cash, right? So Tornado Cash is a nightmare for governments because it mixes up and you cannot find where money went, and so there's probably a lot of money laundering. So what the Ethereum community now proposes, when I was at the conference, is, well, we need to solve that, but we still want to keep the privacy issue in. And so what you can do now with this new development of Tornado Cash is that you get a list of all transactions, and then you can say, well, I'm at least not this transaction. This one seems dodgy, I'm not that one. And this is again from this game theory logic. Well, everybody will then flag the wrong transaction. Governments can go behind it. We've regulated ourselves, and we can stay in this. So there's definitely that dynamic going on. And there's just, I think, definitely from the Ethereum reaching out towards regulators to make the market grow, because they feel also that it's not going nowhere if everything is Wild West and you could do whatever. Yeah. So maybe then the second question.
No, it's fine. I mean, let's have more questions.
Any other question?
Just a quick question.
Can be a long one.
We have the environment, different actors, they are doing their mining, etc. And you mentioned that the majority are holders. So I mine my Bitcoin and I have it with me. I don't do anything with it. I'm waiting for something that might happen in the future, which I don't know. And you mentioned also that not many people decide, okay, I have my Bitcoin, I'm gonna live with that. So I'll be like just a nomad and using only my Bitcoin. So in the end, what's their main idea, let's say in general, of having their digital coin? Let's say. It's only their wish of.
Yeah, no, it's first of all, that's only with the Bitcoin maximalist, right? This hodling thing, most people are not interested in keeping the Bitcoin. They're waiting until it's high enough to get money out of it. So this is really with this group. What they are waiting for is that they believe that the fiat system is going to collapse. That's a very strong, convincing, and this you can also read in people like Menger, Hayek, and so on. So it's not like, I wouldn't call it like a conspiracy theorist. There's also economists who have this kind of logic. But that's what they think. Like at one point, the fiat system, there's just going to be too much money. We're going to get hyperinflation. So when the inflation was breaking out last year, the Bitcoin community was like, look, we were always right. So that is that's why I call it some kind of like post-apocalyptic idea that's almost inevitable for them. Yeah.
My main attraction is on the first part. Why people, young people, is so interested today into Bitcoin. It's a new way of managing money, a new way, and that is very fascinating. In a sense, the same happens in open science. When we are trying to manage science information in a new way. And in a sense, I have appreciated that a lot of rules of the games are in a sense homomorphic to what we are now experimenting in trying to make a new way of managing science. That is a very, we would like to change the way of looking at the money. We are like to change the way you look at science. And the same, cryptos or crypto states. Okay, the origin of science is curiosity. There is nothing to do. So
not applied science.
It's how to become a crypto, the foundation structure, probably also in open science. They will be, somebody has already studied these homomorphisms between this.
I don't know about open science, but the whole web.3 tree came out of partly the Ethereum ecology, and they say, well, we were not on our watch when Web.2 happened, right? Before we know it, we first had an open protocol to have the internet, and before we know it, it was centralized by some major corporations. So we basically have to reinvent, and the blockchain was one of those technological features that allowed people to reinvent that. And I think there's definitely an argument to be made that the internet, the way it was hijacked by some couple of large corporate organization, if you read Surveillance Capitalism of Zuboff and that kind of thing. And it is also definitely a reaction on that. And I would say that's much more on this top side than on the Bitcoin side. That's why they're so involved in, making smart contracts, the whole NFT movement. Also, how you can keep. So there's this new social media app. Where it's called Noster, where you keep your own feed. So you have your feed on your own node and not on one server, or not like Mastodon on several servers, to again reclaim this selfhood and data. So it definitely grows more out of it than only making money. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay, Stefano, if you want to ask a question about state.
No. We could talk later.
We can talk about during lunch. Okay.
Okay. Thank you all for
very much,
coming.
Gilbert.